My name is Kevin Flike, and I was a Staff Sergeant in the United States Special Forces, better known as the Green Berets. I'm originally from upstate New York in a small town called Stillwater. It was a great place to grow up that was incredibly supportive of me throughout my childhood. I went to an all-boys Catholic military school called LaSalle Institute, and while I was there, it really taught me the virtues of God, country, family, and felt this strong desire to serve my country.
This just in, you are looking at obviously a very disturbing live shot there. That is the World Trade Center, and we have unconfirmed reports this morning that a plane has crashed into one of the towers.
Kind of an effort up there yet. Now remember, oh my God.
That looks like a second plane.
This is the plane that we know crashed near Shanksville, a small town in Somerset County.
It literally blew itself into World Trade Center.
The building's exploding right now. You got people running up the street.
Okay.
I don't want to tell you what's going on.
It appears that an aircraft of some sort did hit the side of the Pentagon.
Freedom itself was attacked this morning by a faceless coward. And freedom will be defended.
9/11 happened in my senior year of high school, and it really made me understand that it was my duty to serve the country in the military. I think boot camp was this incredible experience for me because I was from the Northeast, had not had a lot of interaction with people really outside of the Northeast. And the great part about the United States Army is that it takes people from all throughout the country, through all walks of life. And so when I first got there, it was like this culture shock of meeting people that I'd never been exposed to. And it puts you into this environment where you have to learn to work together and you have to work towards a goal. In order to become a Green Beret, I started out at Fort Benning, Georgia, where I did my basic training and infantry training. It was combined. And after that, I moved to Fort Bragg, North Carolina, where I began the Special Forces course. And then the last month of the Special Forces course was Robin Sage, which was the 1 month culmination exercise to draw everything from the course together into that 1 month period. And it was about 20 degrees every night. I got gastroenteritis during the process. I lost 30 pounds that month, and it was probably the most difficult month of my life. I'd be lying to you if I said that I didn't want to quit. There were so many times where I thought about quitting, but I just could never let myself do that. And my parents from a very young age instilled in myself and my brothers that we could have whatever we wanted in life as long as we worked for it. And I think those lessons that I had learned from them from the time I can remember paid dividends when I went through the Special Forces course and wanted to quit. I just knew that if I worked hard enough, I would be able to attain what I wanted. Being able to put my Green Beret on for the first time was unbelievable. That was the greatest feeling up until that point in my life. I was 24. It taught me the value of long-term goals. The Green Berets are basically like consultants for the United States military. You work on a 12-man team, has specialties throughout, so there's a weapons sergeant, communications, intelligence, medical sergeant, and engineering sergeant, which I was. And typically you'll find yourself in another country, training that country's military or their militia. In the case of an Iraq or Afghanistan, you actually fight alongside the soldiers that you are training. And so in that environment, learning languages, being very attuned to the culture, incredibly important things. And so before you would go anywhere, you would do like we call like an area study, because you want to know what's going on there militarily, but then you also want to start to understand the culture that you're going to walk into. My first deployment was to the Philippines. It was just more of a training mission. It was about a month and a half, and that was my introduction into the Special Forces. I was always nervous, and I was scared too, especially when I went to Afghanistan. It wasn't nervousness or being scared because I was worried about dying. I was worried because I didn't want to let anybody down. I think the love that you have for your teammates is incredible. So there's 12 guys on a Special Forces team. So that means that like in my view, 11 other guys' lives are more important than mine. And I know that every other guy on my team had that same mentality. During my first deployment to Afghanistan, the writing was on the wall that my team was going to have to pretty much turn around and go back to Afghanistan about 7 months after we got back. My wife and I, we had been together since we were 18 years old, the first couple of weeks of our freshman year at Union College, and we got married when we were 23. For her, it was very tough, and it was very tough for me to see how difficult it was for her because I was deployed about 75% of the year, and when I was home I was training quite a bit and very stressed out about whatever the next deployment was. So when she found out that I was going to have to go back to Afghanistan again, I think it was nearly devastating for her. I think one of the difficulties that I had in between the deployments was that I couldn't let myself go. I couldn't let myself get accustomed to being back in the States, because I was like, you have to turn right around, you have to go back to Afghanistan. So this isn't real. If you let yourself go, if you get lazy, you're gonna get killed, you're gonna get somebody hurt on your next deployment. I was stationed in Kunduz, Afghanistan, in the northern part of the country, and our mission set was to work with the Afghan Commandos. That's one of the unique things about the Green Beret mission. There's obviously a lot of combat, there's a lot of military training, but it's also this humanitarian mission too, where you're working with this military to try to make them a more freestanding military and give them the tools to succeed going forward. September 25th, 2011, we were 7 months into our second deployment. And so at that point, we're this well-oiled machine with the Afghan Commandos that we've been working with. And so it really came as no surprise to us when we got ordered to do a valley clearing operation. We'd get dropped off at one end of a valley, and we would clear through the valley until we got to a designated point, and we'd get picked up anywhere between 1 to 3 days later. And when we would go through the valley, we would visit the villages along the way, and I'd say probably 1 out of 5, 1 out of 6 times, we might get into a firefight, with the Taliban. On this morning, or on this day, we landed about an hour before the sun came up. I just looked up and I was like, oh wow, this is gonna be tough. You have photo imagery of an area. It just didn't do it justice until you actually had your boots on the ground. It was these large sloping mountains, on each side of the valley, with these folds inside of the mountains, perfect for people to hide and fight in. And the valley was green and lush because it was the end of September, so a lot of cover and a lot of concealment for the enemy. And it just dawned on me that these were my first few moments in this valley. Every step I took was new for me. But the people that were there had been there their entire lives. Just as quickly as that thought came into my mind, we started clearing through some of the houses. And about an hour into the mission, just as the sun was coming up over the mountains, one of my teammates and his squad of commandos started to take heavy fire. And so that was what we call the mad minute. It's the first minute of a firefight. It was just an incredibly confusing minute. But then ultimately, it was decided that we would just drop bombs on that enemy position. After the bombs dropped, it really only served to embolden the enemy. And so for the next 10 hours, my team, Afghan Commandos, fought back and forth on the valley against the Taliban fighters. And then in the 10th hour of the firefight, I found myself on top of a roof, and we were taking fire from an abandoned building.
Where? That compound. See that doorway? It looks right through the building. Right here with us, man. Yeah, I see movement in there.
There was an open field between us and this building. And so to be able to take the building down, a teammate of mine, he volunteered to go with his squad of 10 soldiers. And so they were going to cross this open field. And so I thought that I should just stand up on the roof and walk around because I thought I had less of a chance of getting shot. The other guys on my team had the same idea. So guys would as soon as they started to move across this open field, they stood up, exposed themselves to the enemy, were waving bright colored VS-17 panels, think like a construction vest, to be able to draw fire to us so they could get through this field. The bullets started ripping past my head and landing at my feet, the same for my teammates. And then when my teammate got to the compound, my team sergeant, who was the head of the team, called me and told me, to get off of the roof. He used a couple choice words when he did that, but I looked down at the Afghan soldiers and I was like, look, if we don't get off this roof, we're gonna get shot. I was the last person off the roof and went around the corner of the building because I wanted to try to get a good vantage point as to how I could get my squad together and start to push forward to this dry riverbed that we were taking fire from. And so when I went around the corner of the building, I stood there for a couple seconds to get that vantage point. And then all of a sudden, I was just trying to keep myself conscious so that I could call my teammates to let them know that I'd been hurt, because I was basically just out by myself. After I called my teammates, started to try and treat myself, it was like the training just kicked right in. But there really was nothing I could do. All the bleeding was internal. And I was just laying there for a couple minutes. The pain was just pulsating through my body. I looked up and there was an Afghan soldier that I spent almost 2 years training. He ran around the corner of the building and took me and dragged me by my gear behind the house. My teammates began flooding in and started to work on me.
Give me that goddamn morphine, please. How's he doing it working? You want to stick it? No, I want to get him fentanyl. Okay. Get an ID started on him. Hey, we're going to have to move Kevin. We're going to need security. Let me get the fucking commandos out.
I started to tell something was up, the way that people were treating me. Guys coming up to me with tears in their eyes, telling me that they loved me. People hadn't paid me a compliment in years. And then I could hear guys coming up to our medic and saying, is Kevin going to make it or not? And medic says, I don't know, it looks pretty bad. And so that's when it really started to hit me that these were probably going to be my last few minutes on this earth.
2, 3.
Once my teammates stabilized me, they had to carry me through the Afghan village to get me to the helicopter landing zone. They were going through open fields, they were getting shot at, they were returning fire while carrying me. Incredibly courageous men that I owe my life to.
Roger, we found a location that's close to us. The only danger is brownout.
And once they got me to the helicopter landing zone, it was about 45 minutes from the time I had been wounded to the time the helicopter arrived.
Hey Roger, all enemy contact is over 900 meters from the medevac. Hey, green smoke's out. Signal Z marked by green smoke. Green smoke, over. Yep. I got his head. Sure you can help us carry? Sure.
As soon as the helicopter touched down at the surgery tent, people just, rushed over to the helicopter, unloaded me, brought me into the tent. People in the background are prepping for the surgery. And the surgeon starts to ask me a series of questions. And he says, do you have any questions for me? I said, well, yes. Am I gonna live? And he says, I don't know, it looks pretty bad. We're gonna do what we can, hang in there. "Do you have any last requests?" I asked him to save the bullet if he could, and I actually have the bullet here. But then I thought that was it. I thought I was gonna die, and I asked him for my last rites. And when he put the mask on my face, I said goodbye to this world and asked God for forgiveness for my sins. And I woke up 4 days later when I asked somebody if I had gone to heaven or hell, and they said neither. You're at Launchstuhl Regional Medical Center in Germany. When I woke up in Germany, I was incredibly confused. So people have to continuously keep telling me what had happened to me and what was going on. My stomach had been cut open. 20% of my colon had been removed, and my stomach was still open because they were worried about an infection. I had tubes hanging out of every orifice of my body and was in so much pain I could barely lift my head off the pillow. But then also like just incredibly emotional for me because, you know, I originally thought I was going to die. I'm in here now and really confused. So I was very fortunate that a friend of mine happened to be in Germany, and a year earlier he had gotten hit with 2 grenades and had gotten shot. So he was convalescing from his wounds. And he came into the intensive care unit to see me. He asked me a couple questions, how I was doing, did a little chit chat, and then he gave me the best advice I've ever gotten in my life. And it's the advice that really got me through everything and I still use today. And in the intensive care unit, he looked me in the eyes and he said, "Hey, listen, Kevin, plenty of people have been shot. Don't be a fucking pussy about this." And so that really framed it for me. Like, I didn't need anybody feeling bad for me, and I certainly couldn't feel bad for myself because this was gonna be a pretty brutal journey. And I realized that plenty of people had been shot, but other people had like lost their arms, they'd lost their legs, they'd been burned from head to toe, and a lot of friends that had lost their lives. That's what really helped keep me going, I think, when times were very tough. No matter how bad I ever thought I had it, there was somebody else that had it worse than me. And then also, the outpouring of support that I had, just all these people that believed in me and the love that they showed me during that time frame was unbelievable. Whenever I wanted to feel down or I wanted to quit, like I just thought about all these people that believed in me, and I just couldn't let them down. My mother was the first person to see me. It was just so emotional for me at that point. I was just so happy to be alive, to see my family again. But at the same time, I almost felt guilty because I was so happy that I wasn't in that environment in Afghanistan anymore, but my teammates were still there, and felt guilty that I was able to be in the safety of the United States. My wife came next. I think it was really hard for her to see me like in that condition, physically and mentally. I remember her telling me that when she first came in to see me, she said that I just looked like I was dead on the inside. I don't think anything can prepare you to see a loved one in the condition that I was in, where your stomach is cut open. I still had my beard from Afghanistan at the time, had long hair. I think I owe my life to the Afghan soldier that put me behind cover, and to my teammates who continuously risked their lives to treat me, to carry me to the helicopter landing zone, and that had to continue to fight while people were treating me. I was in Texas for about 2 weeks, and after that time frame, I got flown back to my home base at Fort Lewis in Tacoma, Washington. I was in the hospital there for just a couple days, and then they released me. And I was very fortunate that I was able to do all my physical therapy and rehabilitation at the 1st Special Forces Group. And so when I first started the physical therapy there, I thought that I was going to be able to will myself to get better. And I went there anywhere between 4 to 6 hours a day, it's like nothing was going to stop me. But after about 4 months, my stomach began to heal, my hip began to heal, but my left leg remained paralyzed. And it had gotten so small, the muscle had atrophied away so much that it looked like the size of my arm. We went to the University of Washington Neurology Clinic, and the neurosurgeon there could barely read my MRI. There was so much damage. And he jokingly said, try the Mayo Clinic in Minnesota. And it took like everything in my mind and body to not just break down in tears. But my physical therapist, Anya, she sprung into action. She called the Mayo Clinic. The Mayo Clinic was the only place in the country that would actually take my case. They were working on an experimental surgery. However, before we really committed to anything, the surgeon wanted to let myself and my family know how experimental the surgery was. There was no guarantee that it was going to work. I'd have to have my stomach cut open again, which would force me to have to go back on my painkillers, which was incredibly difficult for me to get off of the first time. I'd have to start my physical therapy back from day one. And then if the surgery was even to be successful, it would take almost 2 years to see the full results. But at that point, I really had nothing to lose. And I wanted to know that I had done everything in my power to make myself better, so that I could look at my future children or anybody and just be like, you know what? I did everything I could to be able to be the best person that I am. And so I opted to have this experimental surgery, and when I woke up from it, it was even more painful than after I had been shot. So the surgeon made a large incision here, cut the damaged part of my femoral nerve out, and then cut the sensory nerve from the bottom of my ankle to 3/4 of the way up my thigh, and grafted that into the damaged part of the nerve there. But true to his word, nothing happened for months on end. And I would hang my legs off the side of my bed every morning that I woke up, and I would say, all right, like, today's the day your legs are gonna work. I'd look down and I would focus all my energy on it, and then nothing would happen. But I'd have to get my clothes on and go to physical therapy for the next 6 hours in hopes that maybe something would happen. And about 6 months after the surgery, I noticed a muscle twitch in my leg. And at that point, you know, I had used to measure my success, my physical success, in like 300-pound bench presses and 5-minute miles. And like, to me, this was like the greatest achievement of my life, that I had a muscle twitch in my leg. From that point on, over the course of probably the next year or so, maybe a little bit less, you know, I would notice a little bit of progress. So, you know, went from the twitch to all of a sudden I could move my foot like an inch. And that was huge, until like one day, finally, I was able to do a full extension of my leg, like sweat pouring down my face, like I just ran a marathon. Throughout the process, I had to set these little goals for myself, otherwise I would have lost my mind just going to physical therapy. My strength and conditioning coaches, my physical therapists, they would give me these other goals to work on. And so my lower body was obviously recovering, but my upper body was all right. So like, they challenged me to bench press 300 pounds. And so on the 1-year anniversary of getting shot, I bench pressed 315 pounds.
Kevin Flike, the man, the myth, the legend.
So, let's give everybody an update. I shot 1 year ago today, and I promised I'd run a marathon, but I can't. So, instead, what I'm going to do is a 315-pound bench press, you know, just to commemorate the day. Come on, Kevin. Let's go. Up. Back.
Lightweight, lightweight. Yes, sir.
No excuses.
For the first 4 months after I had gotten hurt, it was just incredible to be alive, and it was an indescribable feeling. But around that time frame, the gravity of the situation really hit me, and that's when I found out that my nerve was not going to grow back unless I had an experimental surgery. And around that time frame, one of my teammates was killed 2 weeks before my team was supposed to come home from the deployment. So I think the gravity of the situation really started to hit home for me, and I just realized how long of a road to recovery this whole thing was going to be. You know, I'd gone from a man who had played college football, served as a Green Beret, and now I needed like help putting on my socks.
How was it, Kevin?
It's exhausting.
It was devastating to me. I was like learning that I was a whole new person. I really started to rely on other things, more destructive to ease my pain from that. Was drinking way too much and had an incredibly difficult time getting off my painkillers after that surgery at the Mayo Clinic. When I left, I was prescribed 12 pills of Dilaudid a day, 12 Percocets, and 2 Valium. And at the time, I needed every one of those pills because I was in more pain after that surgery than when I'd gotten shot. But it was just incredibly difficult. You're taking 26 pills a day and you need to get yourself down to 0. And so I could always get myself down to like 2 to 3 pills a day, but I couldn't quite kick those last few. Until finally my wife sat me down one day and she was like, hey, look, is this it? Is this what you're gonna do with the rest of your life? And I got, incredibly defensive, played the wounded veteran card. I was like, hey, it's just 2 to 3 pills a day. She's like, yeah, it's 2 to 3 pills a day now, and next year it's 3 to 4, and next year it's 4 to 5, and the next thing you know, you're addicted. And so that was the angriest I've ever been with my wife in our 15-year relationship. But I was angry because she was right, because I knew that there was no future for me if I was taking pain meds. And so after this conversation with my wife, I stopped taking my pills the next day, and then I started studying for my graduate school exams the day after that. When I started studying for my graduate school exams, it had only been a year since I had been hurt. And so I stopped taking the pain meds because I knew I needed to be able to focus on my future. And I applied to 3 schools, to Harvard Business School, to the Harvard Kennedy School of Government, and to the MIT Sloan School of Management. And initially I was rejected by both Harvard Business School and the Harvard Kennedy School, and I was waitlisted by MIT. So as soon as I found out I was waitlisted at MIT, I bought a ticket from Seattle to Boston. I flew across the country. I walked up to the admissions office unannounced and said, hey, thanks for putting me on the wait list. Now what do I have to do to get in? And 3 months later, I had an acceptance letter in my hand. And then that fall, I swallowed my pride and I reapplied to the Harvard Kennedy School. I was accepted to do concurrent master's degrees. When I started graduate school, I was still physically healing, but I was also mentally healing. I just felt very out of place the whole time. Wasn't really sure how to interact with my classmates, what to even talk about, and was still dealing with the mental and emotional trauma of what I had been through, and was dealing with physical pain. And for me, that transition into the civilian world was probably one of the hardest things I've ever had to do. I never wanted to quit anything more than my first year at business school. And that includes special forces training, deployments, and being wounded. When I'd gotten shot, my life obviously flashed before my eyes, and then I wake up, I'm going through all this painful recovery. I could have never imagined that my life would have turned out like that. And so to actually have been able to go to those institutions and start a family in the process, continue the physical and mental healing, to be able to go forth and try to be just the best person that I can be, I think was just a milestone in itself. When I was in Afghanistan, I thought about going to business school, but I had no clue that I'd be able to go to MIT or Harvard for graduate school. It just wasn't even in the realm of possibility for me. But going to schools like that was what got me through my recovery. I think if I didn't have this vision of going to a top school, I probably wouldn't have gotten off my pain meds. Well, I'd first say life's pretty exhausting now because I have 2 little girls. So my oldest daughter is 4 and my youngest daughter turns 2 in February. Very blessed with them. They came during the graduate school experience, which made it even more exhausting than it was. But for me going forward, the purpose of my life is to take the lessons that I've learned and try to inspire as many people as I possibly can with them. And to be the best husband, the best father, best citizen of this country that I possibly can be. In terms of getting my message out there, in 2013, I started a blog. I had been working with some other soldiers who were wounded and really enjoyed working with those guys. I realized how fortunate I was to have the support that I had. And so I had been keeping that blog up, woundedbywar.com, since 2013. Initially, I thought that my target audience would just be wounded soldiers, but I had an incredible outpouring of people and support for what I was putting out there, and realized I just had this incredible opportunity to try to inspire people. And then also, I started doing quite a bit of public speaking, and realized how much I enjoyed getting out there and spreading the message. You have this ability to connect with the people that you're in front of, to stare them in the eyes, and you're telling your story. For a long time I thought it was just this story about war and combat and getting shot. And recently I've come to realize that that's a part of the story and it sets things up, but it's really what happened after getting shot, I think, that makes it inspiring and relatable to other people. I say an experience is worth nothing unless you share it. And so if I was to just take all of these lessons that I've learned and these experiences that I've had, and I just internalize them, to me that's selfish. It's selfish to everybody that helped get me to this point. So this is a way for me to thank everybody who's helped me throughout the whole process. It was not easy initially, right? To be able to bare your soul, to say that you were feeling this way, or you were addicted to your painkillers, or drinking too much, or had depression, anxiety, post-traumatic stress. Absolutely brutal for me to get that out there. But I felt like if I could do that, then other people could see that and they could be inspired to maybe deal with their own problems so that they could come out on the other end from it. And the point that I'm at now, I'm at the end. I'm at the light that I saw during the toughest times. I got my family, was able to go to some incredible institutions for graduate school. I have my health, and I have this incredibly bright future ahead of me here. And so I look back sometimes in my past, it almost seems like a dream that all that had happened to me. And so now the reason for this, in my view, is to be able to take these lessons that I learned and go out and inspire other people. No matter how dark it might get, there's always a light at the end of the tunnel, and you'll get there if you don't give up.
What? You have a little attitude today.
How do you like it?
Say hi.